the US is a corporatocracy, and this is news to some. However, this is the benefits and drawbacks to corporatocracy, and why perhaps you shouldn't be too worried about US politics going in a certain direction as things are dictated by companies. Hello and welcome back to the Traveling Reports. Today I'm going to go over the system of governance in the United States and how that influences policy, and why I truly don't believe that the US will become too hostile towards businesses, as realistically it is built upon that very principle of being a business hub. And so, to get into specifics, the term corporatocracy essentially means a state or nation run by corporations. And with that, the United States fits that description very well. And lobbying is a huge reason why that happens. Of course, I will be creating more videos on US-specific topics, especially lobbying, in the near future. However, the fact that the US is a corporatocracy inherently creates a interesting dynamic, I would say, between small businesses, big businesses, and lawmakers, as they do kind of all have similar goals, right? They want to make money. And so, in essence, what you get from corporatocracy is a very pro-business sentiment. And while many of the internationalization channels and international business consultants will tell you that the US is somehow against businesses, that's not necessarily the case. In terms of actually collecting taxes, the US is some of the lowest in the OECD, and in terms of marginal tax rates, again, the US is middle of the pack. It's not the lowest, but it's not the highest either. And so, in essence, you have sort of this inherent movement towards creating value on a level of business growth, and that has worked very well for the US GDP. And especially as of recent, the US has, of course, largely outpaced Europe and Asia in terms of overall revenue. Now, I say this while also acknowledging that it does lead to issues and problems, especially regarding corruption, or what I like to call legalized corruption, in the aspect of, obviously, the lobbying that happens and takes place in the United States. And lobbying is very poor for small businesses. However, if you look at the Ease of Doing Business Index, the US is still within the top 10. I believe that it will continue to be within the top 10 for a long, long time, as while smaller states are more nimble, while smaller states do have more ability to attract capital that will boost their GDP, I think that realistically the capitalization markets are too deep in the United States for them to lose the top 10. In essence, you have a culture and country where you have people that are entrepreneurial and that do end up obviously creating value, not just in the United States, but in places like Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, all the financial places that, of course, are financially beneficial to the people, especially around the world. However, what you get as a result of corporatocracy. However, the negatives are that, of course, there is no free healthcare. There is no competition amongst government agencies at all. And so, US bureaucracy is some of the worst in the world, actually. I was recently in the ministries in Romania, and the ministries in Romania are known for being extremely slow. However, they are lenient, right? And they won't waste your time. If you can't get something, they'll say, no, just we can't help you with that. You can maybe apply later, and we're not going to waste your time. But I went to the DMV in my home state probably 3 years ago now, and I was trying to update my ID. And in essence, what happens with the DMV is I not only had to go back once, had to go back 3 times, because they forgot, not I forgot, they forgot that I had to have 3 different documents. And so, in essence, the United States is not very well run as a result of there being a corporatocracy. Now, of course, bureaucracy is actually less if you own a business in the United States. And there are favorability ratings based on your level of income, your status within a company, and so forth. I can tell you, growing up with family who owned businesses, they were treated a lot differently than, say, someone who didn't. My dad would often get his passport walked through in Washington, D.C., and it'd take a week. Most of the time, even with express delivery, it's not going to take a week. It's going to take 2. Now, that does change a little bit depending on if you're going to an embassy or if you're in the US. Actually, if you get a passport at an embassy, it can be fairly quick. It can be within a week, but it depends on which embassy you're using and how often they deal with Americans. As, for instance, in Albania, there's not a lot of Americans, honestly, utilizing the American embassy in Albania. And so it's corporatocracy that both benefits and hurts the citizens. And I think that as time goes on, we will see more and more of that playing out within the United States as time goes on. Of course, I grew up in the US and I haven't lived there in 3 years, so I don't know how it's going now, but I could tell you from the way I see things, definitely that's how it is. And of course, if you want consulting on how to get around those restrictions, that bureaucracy, feel free to click the link down below to get a Calendly call one-on-one for 15 minutes, absolutely free. If you liked the video, feel free to like it. If you really liked the video, feel free to share. This has been the Traveling Report, signing off.